Hello, everyone. Good morning from a rainy Brussels. So my name is Leila Sawyer, and on behalf of Current, I'm very happy to welcome you to today's webinar on Fit for 55 in a context of uncertainty, crisis, and unpredictability. We have today with us a very distinguished group of speakers. Claude Termes, Susanna Nice, board chair of Current, Paula Abreu-Marquez with DG Enner, and Giles Dixon, CEO of Wind Europe. Some of our speakers are still having some issues connecting, so they will be here with us very soon. So what is the backdrop for this webinar? Could you go to the next slide, please? So energy is now on the desk of politicians at the highest level, also within the Commission. It's now of top geopolitical interest, which is very much affecting the debate today. So for REPowerEU, there are unprecedented plans for scaling up renewables. Only in wind, we will go from 190 gigawatts today to 510 in 2030. While there are also a lot of challenges and insecurities for investors, e.g. market reform or supply chain challenges like in the wind sector. And people are waking up to what kind of grids are needed to support this boom in renewables, but not fast enough. For example, there was only a passing mention in the Energy State of the Union report released on 18 October. And many still think only about very traditional grid build out that is needed and don't think enough about innovation and how to better use what we have. So development of grids is falling behind our ambition. We see this, for example, national grid development plans and EU-wide scenarios are based on the national energy and climate plans, which are now based on outdated targets. And this is why we have very high expectations for the next round of NECPs. Everything needs to move faster and become more efficient. This is where Current comes in. Current technologies can help make our grids as efficient as possible, which means optimizing the grids in the short term, getting through this winter and next winter, and also looking at what will be needed in 2050 and work our way back from there, so that we can have a pan-European grid to support an EU-wide decarbonized economy. And as I recently heard it mentioned, this could, increasing our interconnection could be the peace project for the next decade. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Claude Termes, Energy Minister of Luxembourg, to share his perspective on how NECPs, the Digitalization and Energy Action Plan, and technology could help mitigate the current crisis. Thank you, Claude.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Susanna. Good morning, Giles. Good morning, Paula. And of course, good morning, Leila. And all those who are listening to us today. What is our challenge? I think our challenge this winter will be to get over the winter. On gas, this was very much in the focus. We have filled our gas storages. We are reducing our gas consumption by 15%. Today, the heads of states will decide to join the proposal of Commission to have a joint gas purchase. So I think we are really moving fast to have a coherent and a solid response to the threats from Putin on our gas. On electricity, all of us are looking to this afternoon where ENTSO-E will present its winter outlook, a first insight in the winter outlook. We know that because of gas, the situation is tight, but this will be reinforced by the failing nuclear reactors in France, so a lot of French reactors which are corroded. So also on electricity, we need to get over the winter, and all technology which is based on IT, which can already optimize the existing grid and flows beyond the borders, will already be very, very precious this winter to keep the lights on, especially in some regions and notably in France. So that is our short-term basically challenge. But then we have a challenge which I think is even bigger, which is winning the race against dangerous climate change. I do not need to come back to all these horror events of this summer, fires, extreme heat. What really touches me was these 30 million plus citizens in Pakistan affected by climate change. And we have a lot of other places also in Africa where we don't even get the information of how difficult life for people is more and more because we are too reliant on fossil fuel. So what is really important for us to get is, despite this crisis, which Putin has triggered with this unnecessary war, the main focus has to be climate and moving as fast as possible, not only out of Russian fossil fuel, but of all fossil fuel. And for that, we need to accelerate the electrification. We have to replace as quickly as possible in the next years, not in the next decades, in the next years, all of our oil and gas boilers to heat homes, all of the low temperature processes in industry by heat pumps. We have to speed up the replacement of fossil cars by electric cars, electric vans, and what you have not to underestimate will be the speed of electrification of lorries, and that will move very fast. So we have to get the infrastructure now right. Most of the new lorries of after 25 will be electric lorries, and that needs, of course, a completely different and much more sophisticated charging infrastructure than the one we have already in place for the cars. That has to be combined with large-scale batteries, with electrolyzers also to be placed on the right places. So it's really full speed electrification, and then, of course, speeding up at the maximum the rollout of solar. That's millions of decentralized devices, big and small, rollout of onshore wind, and a big rollout of offshore wind. And this will happen very fast now. Look at what the Danish government has collectively pledged now with the North Sea ministers, the energy islands in the North Sea. That will be backed by an even bigger picture, which Eamon Ryan, the Irish minister, is today in these days doing with the North Sea offshore wind coalition. So we will have gigantic volumes rolled out in the North Sea. For that, we need, of course, cables in the North Sea. We need much better and cheaper also transmission stations. This will often be hybrid infrastructure, which allow trade of electricity, but also collecting the big offshore wind volumes. And for that, we need innovation in the grid industry. The same will happen in the Baltic Sea, which is great also, for example, for decarbonization of the Polish power system. But that is one challenge. But the other challenge is, how do we integrate these large-scale volumes of offshore wind into the Western European power grid? And that has to be planned. And on the 19th of December, the Pentalateral Forum, which is the energy ministers of Germany, France, Benelux, Austria, and Switzerland, will have an event where we present our vision for a fully decarbonized Western European power system. And we know from the climate science and from the fair share of Europe in the climate battle, that the electricity system of Western Europe will have to be fully decarbonized already in 2035. So a huge challenge, much more electric driven devices in heating, in industrial processes, in mobility, much more decentralized, millions of solar power producers, hundreds of thousands of wind, and all that has to be interconnected. And in that respect, the stress on the grid system will be fantastic, and this stress needs to be coped with innovation. And so the best way is, of course, to use the existing infrastructure and to upgrade it with new IT or with new physical devices. And I will give you two examples from Luxembourg, which shows you the potential to have a quick upgrade on existing infrastructure. And of course, we will have to quickly identify big electricity highways, a bit like Germany is doing it in this moment, to connect the big offshore wind hubs with the places where electricity is consumed, like in Bavaria, Baden-Württemberg, in the Ruhrgebiet. And we need a similar picture for not only for Western Europe, but also for whole Europe. And last week, we were as energy ministers in Prague, and my speech was also to say a cable from the Baltic Sea to Prague, to Bratislava, and then linking it to the fantastic Austrian hydroelectricity is not longer than the cable which Germany is building between the Baltic Sea and Bavaria and Baden-Württemberg. So this large-scale cable DC infrastructure will be a complement to the upgrade of the existing AC grid, which is existing. And to end up, and at the pentalateral level and also at the North Sea level, what we are now preparing is also common chapters in the revised NECPs. So the national energy and climate plans have to be revised next year in 2023. And it is important to give this revision of the national energy and climate plans an even bigger cross-border dimension. We will not solve this race against dangerous climate change in our nations, in our borders. We will have to cooperate much more. We need a whole North Sea collective planning, a whole Baltic Sea collective planning, also on grid. And then I think we need also to now plan for the end game, which is zero carbon in the Western European power system. And of course, linking that also with the green hydrogen infrastructure together. Two examples from Luxembourg. We want to be a front runner in IT designed flexibility in the hardware infrastructure, but also in the software. Our biggest power lines are between Luxembourg and Germany. And one of these two power lines, we have now doubled the capacity of import from Germany by replacing the cables on the existing pylons. So I think the citizens have not even noticed that now we have doubled the import volume on that infrastructure, because we use the existing infrastructure with a carbon core cable, and we have done this also in a record time. So that is one investment we are doing. And another investment is that we will equip all of our transformation stations with IT, so that we can have a very good overview from one central, from our dispatching of each and every major points of the electricity system in Luxembourg. And the third, what we are doing, we are creating an energy data platform so that we can have a real-time information about all the consumption of electricity in order to make it available not only for the grid operators, but also for potential aggregators, which will help us to develop local flexibility markets. And Luxembourg wants to be a front runner in that. So the future electricity system will be renewables, renewables, renewables. It will have hardware grid infrastructure. it will have much more IT on the existing infrastructure, but it needs also new flexibility markets, not only at the EU level, but also at local level. And we have to integrate all this, and we have to do it really quickly. And thank you, Susanne, for running this current association, because we have to make people understand that a big part of the solution is IT, is software, using the existing infrastructure and not building out new. We will need new infrastructure, but it would be in monetary times, but in monetary terms, but also in issues of time. We don't have the time to just rely on upgrade of physical new infrastructure to digest all these new renewables, all these new electricity devices. So we have to make a maximum, an absolute maximum of the existing infrastructure, and that can come through new innovation in the IT to better use the existing infrastructure. So that would be my message for today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Claude, for that. A lot of interesting things happening in Luxembourg, and completely agree with your message that these are this fantastic speed, and that things really need to happen quickly now. I would like to now give the floor to Susanne Nies, board chair of Current, working with smart wires, who will tell us more about our paper on NECPs.
Thanks a lot, Leila, and thanks also a lot, Claude. I found it impressive to hear from you, Claude, again, that Luxembourg is not benefiting anymore from, let's say, it's not using the excuse, we are a small country, let's be exempted, but you are leading all the way through. You see it when you go through Luxembourg, you have these fast charging stations on the highways, and you are really leading in your own actions as a Minister of Energy. Yesterday, I had a webinar as Smart Wires with Ukrainian network operators. And during that webinar, we had to interrupt twice because the collaborators of Ukrenergo and DTEC had to go to the bomb shelter. So this is a terrible experience for a webinar. And I think this point, time is of the essence. We have a terrible picture there on the right. Claude referred to Pakistan, and those places that we don't even know is just something we have today as our reality. There's this famous saying by Erich Kästner in German, es gibt nichts Gutes, außer man tut es, nothing good unless you do it. I think it's time of fast action, and Current and the members of Current are trying to drive speed. So we have looked into the 70% target and how member states are using innovative grid technologies to make sure Europe exists electricity-wise. And we have also looked now into the national energy and climate plans, the edition that is now measuring, is there any reference to optimizing the existing grid? And I would like to share with you now the results of our analysis. But before I do this, I also remember this study that we did last year with Consentec, a famous German consultancy based on the border to Belgium in Aachen. And what Consentec had done for us was to look at the combination of such smart solutions for the grids and to find out, are they eating up each other? Are they cannibalizing each other? Or are they completing themselves to make a difference? And in this scenario that was analyzed by Consentec, it came out that more than 90% of congestion and redispatch costs can be saved if you use innovative grid technologies. It is not happening in Europe. It's happening elsewhere. It's not happening in Europe enough. And when you remember now, and Claude mentioned this as well, we need to save energy everywhere. IEA's outlook on gas yesterday published was clearly saying if we are not saving 9 or 13% of gas, then next year we will be below the 20%, and that is the technical gas, and we will be in deep woes. So don't forget that gas is used to generate electricity. Congestion redispatch means nothing else than using energy to redispatch the power in the grids. Please avoid this in the interest of security of supply, sustainability, and European customers. So here's the analysis that we have done on the NECPs. And what is clearly coming out of it is that 8 countries have not looked at all into innovative grid technologies. 9 countries have been looking somewhat into those, and 10 countries have been considering different such technologies. It's not a totally black picture, but it could be much better. So what we are recommending therefore, the very first statement is the national energy and climate plans that have been established through the clean energy package in the governance regulation. What's important here, make them relevant. They shouldn't be just a bureaucratic exercise done by the 4th level in government administration. They should be the reference for national, but also in conjunction, the European net zero trajectories. They should underlie the TYNDP and many other such exercises. Second, it seems to me that many, including also NGOs, have been just saying we need more renewables, and they have been forgetting about the grids. While this is now understood, the message that grids that exist can be optimized is not yet understood at all. So we need an efficient use of existing infrastructure. Your Claude repowering example, taking the lines between Germany and Luxembourg from 220 to 400 kV, is a perfect example for repowering. And there's other tools as those technologies. It's called the NOVA principle. You need to apply what's called the energy efficiency first principle. And that's not only about closing the window when you're putting your heating system on. It's very much about system efficiency. And that as well has not yet been completely understood. High congestion costs in my country, Germany, next year 10 billion, this year 5 billion at least, is not system efficient at all. So the NOVA principle means optimization ahead of reinforcement, ahead of more grids, needs to be applied everywhere. We need to have a better alignment between the NECPs and network development plans. We need to have the NECPs to include a technology toolbox. And just to refer here to what the UK does, they have what's called a Pathfinder approach. Pathfinder means that in the operations by the network operators, they say, I have the following challenge, market, give me a solution, whatever it is, and I will implement it then. We don't have anything like this. We have the sandboxes approach in the EU now, but very often people believe, okay, sandbox is a bit like kindergarten, it's for innovation, it's something that's not mature. But we are talking also about mature technologies, and they need more pathfinders than sandboxes. Then 6, we need the NECPs to include non-binding agreements on the offshore network development plans for renewables, as established by Article 14 on the recently revised 10E. And finally, it would be good if European Commission, but also ACER, would simply assess the benefits of innovative grid technologies for the next 2 winters and for reaching climate neutrality. We can act now if regulation, if mindset, if policymakers give us the opportunity. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Susanne, for that presentation of current paper on the NECPs and the recommendations for the next NECPs. We have been having some connection issues with Paula, but we should be able to hear her now. Paula, can you speak up, please?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, excellent.
Thank you very much. I start by apologizing I had problems in connecting, so I guess you cannot see me. I don't know if you have a video, but I can tell you that I look much better in the picture than in reality. So you're better off like this. I'm so
Paula,
sorry.
that's not true.
Yeah, I cannot confirm that neither.
No, no.
So I'm sorry. And first and foremost, I'd like really to thank Laila and Suzanne for inviting me and also for having this initiative. It is very timely for our current work on the updating of the NECPs, and I'm extremely happy to join this panel with distinguished speakers, including the rapporteur of the governance regulation, so the person who knows best the rules that we are following very carefully in this exercise. I mean, it's not necessary to recall that the European energy and climate landscape and policies have drastically changed since the member states had submitted their national energy and climate plans, and it's back in 2019. So a lot has happened since then. We have a different reality than the one that we had in these glorious days of the clean energy package. But I mean, our determination to achieve the 2050 carbon neutrality is there, and it is even stronger. And we need to keep this in mind in this important exercise of the NECP's revision. Of course, we will need to adjust policies and measures and adapt national plans to get there. And one of the new aspects to account for is the perceived needs of stronger integration and stronger energy union. We had the European Green Deal. So since 2019, European Green Deal, we had the COVID pandemic, we had the Russian war in Ukraine, and each of these developments had important energy impacts and also important policy, triggered important policy measures that alone by themselves would be an enough reason to review the national plans for the period until 2030. These developments over the last year also shed light on the need to accelerate the energy transition. And here I heard very well, Claude, and on the renewable side, it's I mean, we have to tap into our domestic renewable energy resources, benefit from all the technology innovation that has taken place, and also benefit from the incredible decrease in the cost of technology for renewables. So all these has to be taken into account, but also we need to bear in mind the work on strengthening the preparedness and coordinated response to security of supply, to address high energy prices and achieve demand reduction, and here to respond to our concern of both energy security and affordability. We are well aware that we are coming with this revision of the national plans in a very challenging period. As you know, member states have started preparing them or looking at them. They have to submit draft revised plans by June next year, and then we'll analyze them, come up with recommendations in view of having very good plans in June 2024 at the latest. This is the timeline set in the governance regulation. I wonder if we could accelerate a bit given the important changes that have to be reflected there. So they'll be prepared in a very challenging period for both energy and climate policies in this constantly, evolving environment. So it's a challenging exercise for member states. So that's why we decided, given that the governance regulation has not yet been touched in terms of legal revision, that we decided it would be useful to give some help to member states and prepare guidance. We are going to publish guidance to member states, comprehensive guidance, now in November. And here we see this because we see this the opportunity of this. So it's a challenge for member states to prepare these revisions, but at the same time is a unique opportunity to anchor our multiple initiatives and this in this strategic and integrated planning. And these, I would like to recall three main reasons why this is an important exercise. First, it is all our interests, EU level, member states, private stakeholders, that the NECPs remain a unique integrated planning tool, reflecting this all-of-government approach that has proven its value. With updated plans, we avoid that these unique, consistent, and well-established planning, monitoring, and cooperation framework gets outdated and eventually fragmented. And there is this risk. Secondly, it's important to continue and to enhance predictability in uncertain times. Here, of course, I'm referring to the need to enhance investor confidence in these uncertain times, to lay grounds for stimulating the massive investments that are necessary. And third, use the synergies, much more than what we had in the current plan, of the 5 dimensions of the energy union, that is more resilient. So beyond the emergency measures that Europe has been taking, we need to strengthen the preparedness to better react and adapt to crises in the medium to long term. And here, NECPs are also, in our view, the best tool to ensure solid and integrated planning of our energy policies and creating these synergies between the 5 dimensions. Just a word on how we see the updating of the NECPs. So first of all, as I said, we're going to give you guidance, and I would like to refer 6 important elements of this guidance. First, the revised plans, of course, they need to reflect the higher ambition. And here I'm referring obviously to the European Green Deal, the Fit for 55 legislative package, including here as well the climate law. And we have to make sure that the legislative framework is made future-proof in order to be able to get to the 2030 policy and targets. We also, I mean, here in the updating of the plans, it's also important also for member states to bear in mind that main strategies have been put forward, and here I would like for you to refer the offshore renewable energy strategy, but also the energy system integration strategy and the hydrogen strategy. So all of these pointing to the direction, they must be well accounted for in the revision of the plans, alongside the REPowerEU plan and the 3 pillars that it contains on diversification, acceleration of energy transition, and also demand reduction. Of course, when we refer to REPowerEU, we look at the time horizon to 2027, but this needs to also well reflected in the plans. So in our guidance, we will help member states identifying the relevant initiatives and legislative proposals, as well as the concrete ways to reflect them in the update of the plans in terms of targets, objectives, contributions, as well as, very important, the policies and new policies and measures. Second main element, here I'm referring to the recent dramatic development of energy prices and our worries on security of supply. So in the last month, I mean, we have clearly seen that there is a need to reinforce preparedness and strengthen the energy security, internal market, and the competitiveness dimensions of the NECPs. So more than in the past, member states will need to invest in these chapters of the NECPs. I will not go into details. I mean, on the recent emergency regulations that the Commission put forward, the member states have adopted or are still discussing. Of course, while most of these measures looking at demand reduction, looking at ways to mitigate high electricity prices, high gas prices, improve preparedness and solidarity between member states. So all these measures are meant to tackle the current emergency situation. But also, I mean, no doubt they will also very much reshape the EU energy system in the long term. For instance, savings are a key pillar of our energy policy, and the same is true when it comes to infrastructure needs. So in the guidance, we will encourage member states to draw lessons from the implementation of these emergency measures and reflect them in the planning towards an ambition targets and measures for 2030. And in addition, of course, member states are also fully encouraged to reflect interlinkages with other planning tools for infrastructure, such as the NE development plans. Third element, The revised plans have also to reflect the central role of the grids and infrastructure at large to deliver on higher ambition and increase energy security and energy efficiency. And this is the topic of your seminar today. So the ambition has to be matched by investments in the right infrastructure. We have seen in the REPowerEU plan that there is a significant need to build on smart investments as regards infrastructure needs. And in total, we have estimated that to achieve the ambitious targets for both Fit for 55 package, but also the REPowerEU plan, we need over 580 billion euros of investment in the electricity grid. This will be required between until 2030. And this reflects also the importance of optimization, reinforcement, and ultimately the expansion of the grid, as your NOVA process describes very well in your paper. The fourth element, the revised plans need to reflect much more than what they do currently, the regional cooperation dimension. I think this was one of the lessons learned from the current plans. We need to invest much more on this, more than ever. So solidarity and coordinated response is our best strength, the best strength of the EU to shape the future of the energy system. So this is an area that we look very, very closely, and the guidance will encourage the use of the untapped potential for regional cooperation that we have in our plans. Also looking at infrastructure needs and deployment of key energy production, such as offshore energy. The fifth element I would like to refer is also that it is important that these plans do not come in isolation, but also bear in mind that there are interlinkages and there are synergies to be looked at with other planning and important plans. I refer here obviously to recovery plans, also to the common agricultural policy, national plans, but also just transition plans and the cohesion programs. So here there is an absolute interest to ensure consistency, but also synergies and to enforce each other. And then the final element I'd like to refer is also that the plans will need to be aligned with increased digitalization of the energy sector. Earlier this week, you saw that the Commission tabled the action plan on digitalization. And we see that when looking at the NECPs and their revision, it is essential to exploit the synergies between one of the two main instruments at EU level that guide the European Green Deal and Digital Decades policy program for 2030. So the links between our NECPs and the National Digital Decade roadmap. So this also an area that we are looking at in our guidance. So as I said, we are about to publish this guidance. This has been prepared after various consultations at expert level with member states, stakeholders, and this is not an end in itself. I mean, the guidance is just the start of a process. We'll be in close touch with the member states administrations in order to help and orient this important work that is the updating of the NECPs, and obviously in close touch also with the industry and stakeholders at large to benefit from your insights and knowledge of the things, how they go on the ground. And I stop here. Thank you very much. And again, apologies for the technical issues.
Thank you. Thanks to you, Paula, and apologies also from our side on the technical issues. But the important thing is thank you for the comprehensive update, and we are very much looking forward to the guidance in November. And now I would like to present Giles Dixon, CEO of Wind Europe. Video is also not working, but I hope we can hear him well. Giles?
Good morning, Leila. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you perfectly.
Excellent. Good morning, Claude. Good morning, Paola and Susanna. It's great
Now I think we lost you, but
to be having this conversation with you today. But as others have said, there is a huge expansion plan Under REPower emission wants wind to grow from being 15% of our electricity today to 43% of our electricity by 2030. That entails huge expansion of wind energy capacity over the next 8 years. Offshore, yes, huge growth there, but actually in gigawatt terms, even more growth in onshore wind. Germany, for example, is planning to build 10 gigawatts a year of new onshore wind farms from 2025. Now we face 3 huge challenges for this expansion of wind energy in order to deliver it. Number 1 is the build out of the grid, of course. Number 2 is the permitting bottlenecks. It is still too complex to get permits for onshore and offshore wind farms. The rules and the procedures are too complex. It all takes too much time. The good news here is that in REPowerEU, Paula, Commission have done a very good job. You recognize it's pointless having these ambitious new targets if we don't urgently simplify the permitting. And there are 3 things in REPowerEU that will really help. Number 1 is enshrining the principle that the expansion of renewable energy is a matter of overriding public interest. That will help us to ensure that there is a healthy balance between the twin policy goals of the energy transition and protecting biodiversity. Number 2, confirming the legal principle in EU law that when it comes to species protection, we should take a population-based approach to protecting the overall numbers of different bird and animal and fish species, rather than trying to protect every single bird or animal or fish. And thirdly, clarifying that the 2-year deadline for taking decisions on permitting, that the clock starts ticking once the first permit application goes in. That's the environmental impact assessment. It's not clear in the existing directive when the clock starts ticking on those 2 years. And too many member states today are only starting the clock ticking when the final permit application goes in. That's no good. You've got to start that clock ticking when the first permit application goes in. And when we can do that, we will save years that we're currently losing in the permitting process. So that's permitting. There is one other aspect of permitting in the REPowerEU proposals, and that's this idea of creating go-to areas where you have really fast permitting in certain selected areas. For onshore wind. For offshore wind, we don't need it because we've already got the maritime spatial plans, and they are already very good. They identify space in Europe's seas for over 200 gigawatts of offshore wind farms already. The key thing in permitting is to accelerate the permitting processes in all areas, and that's what those 3 things I've just described do. And maybe on top of that, the go-to areas may add some value as well. After the permitting, the final challenge we face is the supply chain. In wind energy, we have a big supply chain in Europe. It's operating at a loss today. All 5 turbine manufacturers are losing money for a whole host of reasons, which I won't elaborate, but they need to be brought back to profitability. Otherwise, we won't have a European industry to make the turbines for this huge expansion of wind energy. Even when it's in profitability again, the wind energy supply chain needs to grow. We don't have enough factories to make these huge volumes of turbines, onshore and offshore, that governments now want. For offshore wind, for example, from 2026, we got to build 20 gigawatts a year of new offshore wind farms. Our factories today making offshore wind turbines can only make 7 a year. We need new factories. Vestas last week announced they're going to build one in Poland. We need many more such announcements. And it's not just the turbines, it's the foundations. The foundation manufacturers we have in Europe today for offshore wind, they're fully booked for 3 years. We have bottlenecks also on the vessels that install the offshore wind turbines. And this needs urgent attention from policymakers. Governments have the money, not least through the recovery fund. And we're now saying to governments, come on, spend this money to build out the supply chain. Do what America is doing with the Inflation Reduction Act, very generous investment tax credits for the wind energy and solar energy supply chains. That's the expansion of wind energy. What about digitalization and the action plan? It's really good, Paula, well done. And it's great that you're focusing on how to decarbonize the IT sector and how to digitalize the energy sector. There's a big focus on consumers here. That's good. And there's a big focus also on how to digitalize electricity generation and transmission. A few brief final observations on that. The TSOs clearly have a key role to play here. There is so much scope for them to digitalize existing grid infrastructure and optimize existing grid infrastructure, investing in dynamic line rating, modular power flow control. We're not using our existing wires efficiently enough today. There's much more scope to increase the temperature, get more electrons in if we invest in this IT equipment, which is already available. When it comes to data optimizing volume, just getting as much data as possible into the system. Okay, that's fine, but we've got also to put a value on these data flows. And there needs to be a very precise mapping of who should be sharing what data with whom and who should be paying for those data flows. The digital twin concept will be very useful, but let us please look at what existing technical standards and models are out there for digital twins. Don't try creating something new and reinventing the wheel when there are already good models. And the same applies to cyber security. There's some very good existing rules there in the network infrastructure security directive, for example. Let's use what we have rather than creating new regulations that just overlap and create confusion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Giles, for giving already these very concrete suggestions how we can save years in speeding up permitting procedures, and the other suggestions on the digitalization energy action plan. So let's now move to the panel discussion, the panel part, the questions from the audience. I would like to start with a general question to all panelists. So we have heard everything about that is urgent. What would be your #1 recommendation for how to speed up and make use of what we already have, make the most of what we would already have? Who would like to go first?
I can start, Leila. My simple proposal is that TSOs, while they are not responsible directly for the congestion costs and curtailments, have to bear those costs if they don't take action.
Paula, do you have any, maybe call on you if we can still hear you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Difficult to nominate one single first thing to do. I think we have to, and I would like to avoid going to that direction, because from a perspective of the energy union, and as I said during my intervention, member states and the EU, I mean, we need to look at the 5 dimensions altogether, and not just one or two, as most member states did in their current plan. So I think there is room to come up with speedy action in all 5 dimensions. And here, obviously, in the light of the current circumstances, we would expect much more action and faster action when it comes to the energy security of supply, internal markets, and and everything that relates to the competitiveness. But if you would like me to pinpoint one thing, and building on what also Giles was saying, obviously, I mean, our best strength in this energy system is our determination and the vast potential in renewables. And here, two things that I think are important to tackle, and that could lead to immediate impacts would be obviously the permitting, and here we call on our co-legislators to get the best out of the current discussions, and on the RED II with that regard to speed up, and Giles gave good examples of that, and connected to that to speed up the investment in renewables, in particular in the short term. I would also mention we need to invest in skills and have a skilled workforce, because this is proven to be one of the bottlenecks at the moment for renewables to give this immediate response to the concerns, energy concerns, I mean, energy security, and also to the energy prices concerns at the moment. Thank you.
Thanks, Paula. Can I ask Claude, what would be your number one recommendation for speeding up?
I think what is really important is to get the grid operators, but also policymakers, but also NGOs and all actors around the electricity system, this deeper understanding of what can be done immediately to better use existing infrastructure. And I think, for example, your study you have done with Consent Tech, I think it's really important that you think about, okay, give also the stakeholders concrete examples on how to use existing technology because otherwise there is a risk that there will be this perception it's impossible to speed up the deployment of renewables and to speed up the deployment of electrification, and we cannot speed up because the grid is not there, and that would be a disastrous message. And therefore I think it's really important to show very precisely how quick fix, cheap fix, because that it costs much less money to do this IT improvements than to build a new hardware infrastructure. And I think you have to better advocate this, and then work maybe also with Commission that in their document which they provide to governments, that there is precise information, and that governments are in a certain sense a bit more forced to also think about in the NECPs on what are the quick IT solutions to upgrade the existing grid. That would be my favorite.
Thank you, Claude. I'm going to ask Giles, but if you would like to respond to that, Paula, or you are welcome to respond first before I give the floor to Giles.
You can go ahead with Giles.
Okay. Giles, your number one recommendation for speeding up. I know you already gave a few.
We're missing lots of tricks today. Claude has pinpointed many of them with very good suggestions, so has Paula. And Susanna, here's one other. We only have 7 large-scale combined wind farms and solar parks in Europe today. That's shocking, because wind and solar are so complementary. You put them together with some battery storage capacity, and you get very firm, reliable, stable electricity production. Why don't we require all member states to run emergency auctions by the end of next March for combined wind, solar, and storage projects? There's huge appetite among the industry to run these. And people would bid into these auctions. The TSOs would like it because they'd be offering firm connection permits. They like that. And this needs to be made to move somehow.
Thank you, Giles. So a question from our audience. A question to Claude, asking if you are following coordination projects that will eventually create energy data spaces and harmonize work that is being done on data interoperability throughout Europe. If this is something that you are following with interest.
So that's something which I had not already on my radar, but in my team I have some fantastic experts. So if you provide me with a bit what's going on, what is important, that is something which we could also step in.
Okay, thank you. Another question to Paula. Paula, it says, do you intend in the revised plans to also look at grid optimization technical solutions? I suppose the question is whether that will be part of your recommendation as you are not drafting the plans.
Yes, indeed, absolutely. This will be covered in the guidance, which is, as I said, very comprehensive, so that member states have the full overview of the elements that should not be forgotten, and also suggestions what to look and how to which elements should be detailed in and how in this plan.
Okay, well then I would like to just sum up the learnings from today's webinar. What I heard from Claude was really all the developments that are happening now in Luxembourg, but also at a European level, and the huge challenge, but also big projects happening in the North Sea, the Baltics, but also what will be needed, front runners, aggregators, new flexibility markets. From Susanna, we heard what is the in the current national energy and climate plans and what needs to be included in the new round of energy climate plans to make them to help us achieve the Fit for 55 target. Paula gave a very comprehensive overview of what to expect from this guidance, what all the elements are, and how to get faster action and the determination that will be needed to achieve this. Then finally, from Giles, thank you for all the input on permitting, how to speed this up, how to not reinvent the wheel and use what we already have. So I would like to thank our audience for participating, for all the questions. I would like to thank our distinguished panelists for making the time to speak with us today. And we very much look forward to the reading the guidance in November and continuing this discussion with the member states and policymakers. So thanks everyone, and speak with you soon.
Thank you, Leila. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very
Bye-bye.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.